Hello and welcome back to Mark's Garden UK. I'm Mark and I'm just back from 3 weeks away. I had a 2-week holiday, then I had a 1-week business trip in Berlin, and I've been asked for an update by several people on my pruning experiment on my olive trees. So that's what I'm going to give you in this video, a bit of an update, and I've got some surprising findings actually, so stay tuned. But let me just give you a recap of what I did. This olive here I rescued from a garden centre, and actually I knew there was nothing wrong with it, so probably using the word rescue is not appropriate, but it wasn't in the best state and it didn't look particularly aesthetic. So that's one I rescued. And then these two here were two olives which I bought just over 12 months ago from a supermarket, and I rescued those again in inverted commas because there really wasn't anything wrong with them, they just hadn't been really well cared for. And then recently I decided to try an experiment on these two olive trees. One of them I decided to leave as a kind of a control and see how well it did without any treatments. And this one, I deliberately tried to kill it. I pruned everything off it and wanted to see how resilient and robust these olive plants are. And I'm going to show you what's happened with that in a moment. Whilst I was doing this, I also took some hardwood cuttings, and they're over here. I wanted to see how easy it was to get olive trees to root. Now, something interesting about that, which I'm going to explore in a minute, but it's a little bit inconclusive. But I've observed something on two of these pots, or two of these cuttings in both these pots, which I find interesting and promising. So we'll come back to that in a moment. Let's get back to these olives. I'll start off with the one I rescued from a garden centre. I'll bring the camera in a little bit closer. Now this olive tree here, or should I say olive bush, came from a wonderful garden centre called Norbridge, which is in Staffordshire. I did a video on Norbridge and I'll put the link to that video at the end of this one. But if you're anywhere near Staffordshire, do go to Norbridge because it's a wonderful experience. It's not just a garden centre. You're getting access to some wonderful plants and some fantastic expertise. And it was David at Norbridge who allowed me to buy this at a reduced price. David doesn't normally sell substandard plants, but I told him my intentions. He said he was happy to let me do that, so I bought this. And essentially what it was when I first bought it, and I'll try and find some footage, it was this plant, but it had been allowed to get really straggly, and it was in the kind of the back of the garden centre in what you might call the hospital section, I suppose. And I spotted it and I asked David if I could take it away, and he allowed me to. And what I did was I was quite brutal to it. I took it out of its soil and I took all the soil off the roots and trimmed some of the roots, and then I replanted it into very well drained soil. So in this pot at the bottom there are crocks at the bottom which block the hole but allow the water through, and then in the soil I added in the compost I added lots of perlite which allowed it to drain freely and aerate the soil, because olive trees need oxygen around their roots. If you think about the native climate of an olive tree, it lives in places like Greece where the ground is arid and it's not very fertile and it's got lots of rocks in it. So, and these survive for hundreds and hundreds of years in that climate. So if you're planting an olive in the ground or in the pot, make sure it's well drained. And I've always left, whenever I planted something in a pot, I've always left a good gap above the surface of the soil so they can flood it, because that's how I water my olives. I let them virtually dry out and then I flood them maybe once a week in the summertime, and I feed them once a week as well. But let's get back to the pruning experiment. Essentially I took it right back from probably about 1 metre in diameter or more at the head and brought it right back. And what you can see from that, what that demonstrates really by doing that, is you can see that olives will grow back from dead wood. And it's surprising really, because the hard wood on the edge of these olive branches, you'd think how could anything possibly even ever sprout from that, but it does, and that's evidenced here. And it's not looking perfect yet, but look at all that lovely fresh growth there. If I look after this, keep feeding it, probably repot it once every couple of years, refresh the soil at its roots, This will reward me by becoming a lovely standard lollipop shape. That's what I'm aiming for with this one. Of course, if I wanted it to produce fruit, I would have to take on a different approach to pruning, because they fruit on last year's growth, and if you keep cutting that off, you're cutting off the flowering spurs, which will eventually become the fruiting spurs. So anyway, listen, we get back to the point. Look how well this is doing, having been repotted and pruned. And I got a bargain there, because I think I got 60% off the retail price of that. And I'll give you some close-ups of some of the branches growing out of the hardwood on the head of this olive tree. Very pleased with it. That is going to become a very attractive specimen plant in my garden. Let's go and have a look at the brutal extreme olive tree pruning experiment, which is where I almost tried to kill one, and we'll see if it's died. Let's have a look at it. And these are those two plants here. I'm going to take them over to the table so that I can get the camera a little bit closer to them and show you what I've observed on this one, which is the one I tried to kill. I'll also give you a quick look at the other one, which I just give a basic pruning to. Let's go to the table. We're now in my exotic tropical garden. This is the exotic tropical border, which I'll do another update on. Whilst I'm here though, just look at this. That's a canna, would you believe? Musifolia, canna musifolia. That's a Musa basjou, which is a banana. The leaves on that canna are almost as impressive as the leaves on that banana. And that's what you buy those cannas for. You buy them for the leaves, the foliage. You don't buy them for the flowers. Going back to that another time, let's have a look at this olive. Move that lavender out of the way. I'll give you a close-up in a moment. This was a standard lollipop olive bush, and I wanted to see just how sturdy and resilient olives are. So I took all the greenery off the top. I left one leaf. That's the leaf I left, it's still there. And I wanted to see, compared to the other one, which I'll go and get in a moment, whether it would come back again. Let me bring the camera in close so that you can see what's happened, because it's fascinating. So this is now the top of that olive tree, which I pruned right back to see how resilient and robust it is. And that is the leaf that I left in place. Now, not much going on anywhere else unless you look really closely. Let me rotate the plant. It's definitely still alive. I've not managed to kill it yet. So there's a leaf set there coming through. But not only is there a leaf there, there's also one here. You see there at my fingertip. And there's another here underneath. I think we can discard that. We don't need that anymore. So I think what we can safely say is that that branch there, that element, is definitely still living. Got leaves there, leaves there, leaves there, leaves there. What about these other branches here? What's going on with those? Well, they don't look very healthy. In fact, they look dead. But there's only one way to find out. Let's go in with some secateurs and prune a piece off. So, if we take this branch here and snip through it, I can see there is still green there. What seems to be happening, all the energy seems to be going up here at the moment. Whilst I'm talking to you, I've just noticed a tiny little leaf set there. Look at the back there, where my fingers are. It's definitely still alive and it's definitely still growing. So this branch here is growing and this branch here is not growing, but it still has green in it. It's still got sap rising in there. It's still got life in it. So we'll leave that, but let me show you something which I find absolutely fascinating. Now, I don't know if you've heard of the concept of apical dominance, which is essentially where the top of a branch produces a hormone which goes back down the plant and prevents things from below it from growing. It suppresses the growth below it. That's called apical dominance, and you get it on the apex bud. That's why it's called apical dominance. I don't know whether that's at play here. We've got growth there and growth there and growth there and growth there. But let's have a look at the trunk, because this is what really fascinates me. If I tilt the camera back down here, can you see there, if I put my hand there and zoom in, it started to sprout all the way up the trunk. Those little sprouts of olive branches prove to me that there's quite a lot going on underground in the soil. But let me just zoom out again. What I do know is that energy from that soil will be going into producing those at the expense of these at the top. So I'm going to take the radical step, and it upsets me to do it, of breaking all these off, because I want all that energy to go up to the top of the plant. So there we go, I've made that stem bare again, and I now think that that will cause it to push all the energy up to the top, and hopefully we'll get even more growth up here at the top. I'm going to end this video in a second, but I'll very quickly show you the one that I didn't prune, and we'll have a look at that. And I've just reminded myself actually that I did give this a little bit of a prune a few weeks ago. And look what's happened. Again, we've got lots of new growth. I'm starting to conclude that these olive trees are a lot more robust than we give them credit for. Prune them hard back, they come back with vigour and gusto. So there you go, just shows you, doesn't it? Quite tough things, these olives. That one I tried to kill, but it's come back strong. This one had a very light pruning, and it's doing really well. The key thing for me with olives is drainage. What do you think? Let me know what you think. But I think they don't like very wet roots, and also they don't like to be wet in the winter time. So don't be watering them and feeding them when they're not growing. Hope you've enjoyed that. I enjoy my little experiments in the garden. I'll give you an update another time again on these, but quite pleased. 3 weeks away and I come back to new growth on an olive tree that I'm trying to kill. Bye for now.